Hey, everybody, this is Bob Smith, and this is the newest edition of the Outdated Wrestling Hour, even though when you start to listen to it, it may not sound like the latest edition. Now, why would that be? Well, as you may remember, I had some surgery a little while ago, a long convalescence as well. And before that all took place, Mr. Steve Gennarelli stepped up to the plate and recorded about 4 shows with me that we could pop in during my convalescence. Well, I am back now, and as you can tell from our recent new episodes. But there was one that was left over, so we're going to give you that show right now. And you'll know it was recorded a while ago because something we talk about at the very beginning of the show could never happen in August. So you'll hear what that is. Just remember, it's a brand new show, we promise. This has never been heard before, and it's a topic we think you'll like. The movers and shakers of pro wrestling from its storied past. So hang on. It's a new show, I promise. And thanks for your patience during this time. Hopefully every show that you get now will be recorded within a close period of time to when you actually hear it. But again, this was recorded some months ago, and I think it's a good one. We'll see if you think so too. We'll be right back. It's your one-stop shop for great wrestling. It's the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. Ray Russell brings a host of great shows right to your device. There's the Wrestling Memory Grenade, Regional Wrestling, The Wrestling Stoop with Bob Roop, The Amazing Puro Academy Show, Retro Wrestling Review with Gene Jackson, Dave Dynasty's long-running hit, Wrestling Nostalgia, Monday Warfare, Raw vs. Nitro, the hilarious Other Ship podcast, and a whole lot more. Great shows and great guests, but where do you find all this stuff? Really simple. Try logging on to WrestleCopia.com. As I like to say, it's your one-stop shop for great wrestling memories.
It's superplexes and spats. It's the Outdated Wrestling Hour.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Outdated Wrestling Hour podcast. My name is Bob Smith. You may remember me from my years with Pro Wrestling Illustrated and other professional wrestling magazines. How are you tonight? We have another one of our special edition shows. This one is Wrestling's Old School Movers and Shakers. What does that mean? Well, the promotional brilliance behind many of your favorite wrestling organizations. Over about 10 or 15 of them here, and we miss all of them. None of them are around, but we certainly miss them. And our special guest is always special, is Steve Gennarelli from the Stick to Wrestling podcast with John McAdam from Arcadian Vanguard. And we're going to have a lot of fun with Steve, just like we always do. This is one of our infrequent special edition shows. Joe Puccio will not be with us on this one. He will be back on our next episodes. So in any event, hunker down, get yourself a nice, tasty beverage. And we'll be back in a couple of minutes. Yeah, about a minute 30. I don't know if I can count that high at my age. Attention, Gen Xers. If you'd like to explore the era that appeals to you, look no further than GenerationXWire.com. The generation who grew up with the elite in entertainment, music, movies, TV, books, pro wrestling, and more finally has a one-stop destination for all their Gen X needs. From Aerosmith to Batman to the Killer Bees to the Twilight Zone, there's something for everybody at GenerationXWire.com. You won't find a more eclectic mix of pop culture content than at the leading website that specializes in the greatest generation, GenerationXWire.com. Check it out today. folks, I don't know when this particular podcast is going to hit the podcast airways, but I can tell you this. I am looking out my window right now, and I haven't seen it snow this hard in years. I'm in the New York City area, and they're telling us we're getting about an inch and a half an hour. Don't ever recall hearing inch and a half an hour, but it's going to be about 8 to 14 inches of snow here. So while I'm snowbound, I'm lucky enough to have a snowbird in Steve Gennarelli, who moved to Florida. You lucky son of a gun. How are you?
I'm doing well, Bob. It's 81 degrees. Bob hates me already. Yeah, it's really nice weather today, but we're going to get the colder weather starting tomorrow, and it could be on the cooler side here. So, but the life goes on.
I envy you greatly. I love Florida. I have one of my best friends lives in Vero Beach, and I've been remiss in going down to visit, but I wish I could see him more often. In any event, Florida weather, Florida people, really nice. In any event, we're going to go back in time here, like we always do. And Steve is always great at coming up with these ideas. And we're going to look back at what Steve calls the movers and shakers of old school wrestling, the promotions and how they promoted. Each one was different. Each one was run by different people, and each one had its own individual flavor. I'm going to have some on my list that I'm sure are different than some on his, and we're obviously going to both have some of the same on our list. I have about 5 of them here. I don't know how many Steve has, but I really put my thinking cap on and thought about this because, when you think about it, even in the 70s, I'm going back that far, no two organizations were alike. They all promoted differently. They had different type of fan bases. Even the way they scheduled cards was different. Everybody did their own thing and got away with it in those days because wrestling was really popular. Don't let them rewrite the history books on you out there.
You're absolutely right. And I was thinking kind of that this would be an interesting look back at not only the promoters, but power brokers. And when I say power brokers, that could also include the wrestlers, the big name wrestlers who had a lot of say, a lot of pull, and ones who are very influential. On my list, one of the names I'll give you, I have is Ed Farhat from Detroit, who is better known as the original Sheik. Now, in the early 70s, he was one of the real movers and shakers because his promotion was one of the hot places to go to. The Detroit promotion was one of the premier promotions. They put on these mega shows with sometimes 13 matches on a card. And when he went to Japan one time, a bunch of his guys broke away and basically tried to steal the promotion away from him, which Brian Solomon notates in his great, great book on the Sheik. So pick that up if you haven't already. By the end of the 70s, the Sheik was on his last legs. The promotion was dying out. And it's kind of a sad story, but I would definitely put him on the top 10 just because that promotion was doing so well, a group of wrestlers wanted to steal it out from under him. So that's how important he was. And he was huge in Japan as well.
Well, there's a lot of meat on that bone. For a minute or two, I would probably say 74. Just to narrow it down, maybe 73. He may have been the top drawing promotion in the cities where he drew in the country for that short spell.
That's right.
He always drew, but they got really hot when Dusty Rhodes was coming in and that particular period, the Funks, all that stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, red hot crowds. Our good friend Dave Brzezinski posts a lot of the programs from that era. They were having 18-match cards.
That's
it was
amazing.
Incredible.
That's amazing.
All with big names.
Right.
I mean, it wasn't filler. Maybe Mike Loren against, they called him Porky the Pig, too, by the way, Mike Loren.
Right.
Porky Pig against, let's say, El Bracero or something like that, like way down on the list.
Sure.
But the fact was you kind of knew everybody was on the show. He had main eventers from other organizations in the number 4 match in a tag team match.
Right.
It was amazing.
Right.
So he was doing a lot right. And also, I want to not give short shrift to his father-in-law, Francis Flesher, I think it's pronounced.
Right.
Fleser, who was the co-promoter.
Right.
If you ever looked at the old newspaper, as you see, they put his picture in there once in a while, Francis Flesher as your promoter.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing how they kept it secret about the champion being the actual promoter, but that's wrestling at its best.
Right.
I really suggest people check out Blood and Fire by Brian R. Solomon. If you really want to know the truth about that promotion, check it out. It had its own flavor. I call it the number 1 grit and spit organization.
Right.
Everything was real gritty and violent, and feuds were common. If it was a match where it wasn't a feud, it was uncommon. It was just all action, promoted primarily. The big arena was the Cobo Arena, as you know, Steve. And the old guard there, I wrote down the Poffos, Angel and Lanny, Jess Ortega, who people tend to forget about, big as
Sure.
a school bus.
Yeah.
Bulldog Don Kent, Furpo, Mark Lewin,
Louis
wrestler
Martinez.
announcer Louis Martinez, yeah, Lord Ethel Layton, who also doubled as an announcer, Tony Marino, Ben Justice was a big local hero there. Well, Abby was Sheik's protege, so obviously he would debut there pretty much. Tex McKenzie, George Steele, the Funks, Igor, Haystack Calhoun. But they also cultivated younger wrestlers from
Yes.
out of the territory.
Right.
Randy Savage,
Right.
Gino Hernandez. A football player named Walter Johnson tried it out. Killer Tim Brooks in the late 60s, the California Hells Angels, one of whom was, Colt there.
Right.
Announcer Terry Sullivan, and helped perpetuate the emergence of a suddenly good guy named Dusty Rhodes.
Absolutely.
So there was so much going on. But I also want to bring this up about it, just from a personal standpoint. If you read the wrestling magazines as much as I did as a kid, you would never know the promotion was starting to fade by 75, 76. Because the Sheik was still on the cover, still on the insides, because he had the most lurid matches and the most bloody matches. And obviously they would scream, the Sheik must be stopped and all this stuff. That went on until about 1980, even after his promotion folded. It was amazing.
I was buying my very first magazines in 76. And at that time, the Sheik was still extraordinarily popular. And for those that don't know, wrestling was so popular in that time frame, 1976, we'll just use as an example. It was so popular that they had these secondary titles, the After magazines did, Best of the Wrestler and Wrestling Annual and other books. They were basically just reprint books where they would print old articles that had appeared in old issues. And for people who were probably too lazy to order the back issues. But that's how a young fan like me could read up on the stuff from the earlier 70s and learn. And I was just fascinated. And like Bob said, yeah, the promotion may have been dying out around 1980, but if you were just a fan of the magazines, you had no clue. I mean, you just thought the Sheik was still like larger than life and kicking butt all over the country, and he was.
Really true. And, we've talked about this on the show before, but we'll give it short shrift here as we fade away from this. The Sheik killed his own territories, Toronto and Detroit. He killed them. He just 3-minute, 45-second main events where he would never lose for years. People just got fed up. They got tired of the shtick. He didn't see it coming, but everybody else did, I think.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Over time, what he did in Japan, his legacy, the Brian Solomon book, he is a legendary figure in wrestling. In fact, in 1986, when The Observer was getting ready to do a special Who's Who of Wrestling book, they actually asked the fans to vote. They're the hardcore fans, and they did vote Sheik the greatest heel of all time. So that was no surprise there. I mean, he has to be considered in that conversation greatest heel of all time.
We'll be back after a quick break.
Hi, this is Ross, the host of Smells Like Humans. Each week we talk about the curious things that people do. Fans say it's like hanging out with your funny friends. If you like lighthearted conversation, personal stories, and a hint of psychology, chances are we are discussing something relevant to you, like relationships, dreams, phobias, weddings, work, cults, 100 topics and counting. Sometimes silly, sometimes serious, but always fun. Please join us, because no matter who you are, we all smell like humans. Please click the link in the show notes.
His last act in Japan, who could have ever saw that coming?
Yeah.
He was too old to be doing it, but there he was doing it. And that flaming death match where he almost got killed, to be honest with you. That's what he was born to do. That was his deal. Shock and awe with the fans all the time. And promoter like Frontier Martial Arts was tailor-made for him.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting that he did have a last act like that. And there he was with his nephew Sabu, and there he was playing drums in Japan with fire and blood and all kinds of things happening around him. But a very interesting ending to a very unique career.
Give us your next pick, if you'd be so kind.
Okay. Well, I'm going to give you another fellow who definitely has to be listed on a Power Brokers list in the 70s and in the 80s too, and that would be the great Paul Bosch. Paul Bosch, I think, is most remembered for being one of the great payoff guys in wrestling, according to the wrestlers. Very fair guy who would pay you what you were worth in the ring. And, Houston was more of a city than a promotion, but he promoted it in a very unique and special way and made it seem like Houston was one of the centers of the wrestling world, and it truly was. So I just wanted to acknowledge Paul Bosch for those mega shows that he would produce, and he kept producing them until his retirement in 1987.
Paul Bosch was so popular, he used to do his own ads.
Right.
Did you ever see those cool ads he did for this smoked meat product? I don't remember what kind of meats it was. He was selling like sausages or something, and he's actually frying it, and he takes one out of the pan and he bites into it and goes, "You won't find flavor like this anywhere." That's how much he was loved in that area by not only the wrestlers, like you said, but the fans too.
Yeah.
And you know why? Quality, no nonsense wrestling from the opening match to the final bell. He was a great promoter, promoted great cards, drew great crowds. And I think the word great definitely applies to Paul Bosch.
Oh yeah, yeah. I do remember the jewelry commercials, and he had a diamond in his ear, and just a great local presence. Just a remarkable guy, larger than life, and I would definitely put him on the mover and shaker list because he can call any of the big names in wrestling, the Brunos, the Vern Gagnes, the Funks, Fritz von Erich. He could call anybody, have them appear on a show because that's how powerful he was.
Worldwide influence too.
Oh,
I remember the
absolutely.
talent trade-offs and stuff like that, and
Oh,
bringing
yeah.
foreign wrestlers once in a while. I really treasure YouTube for things like the surprising amount of Paul Bosch stuff you can see on there. It's really great.
Yeah, and the nice thing about it is, I mean, his promotion and the way he headline these shows, he did it so respectfully and treated people with respect. And it wasn't cheesy. It wasn't gaudy or over the top. It was just right. It was just like watching a sport or watching a classy thing. I mean, he really brought class to wrestling, I think.
And let us not forget he would announce his own cards too.
Yeah.
On TV or in the
Yeah.
tapings that he did.
Yeah.
And he was good at it. You don't feel like you were missing anything.
Yeah.
Man, I miss those days like you never believe. Can I move on to
Please.
an obvious third choice here?
Please.
I'm going with Vince McMahon Sr.
Yeah.
and the old WWF. And now remember, this is a cutoff point on this one. I'm just talking about the triple WF
Of course.
until it changed. I don't even remember what year they started to call it. Do you remember what year they changed it? They took the other W out. Was it
I think
80 or 81?
I think it was 79 that they took the W out. But as far as the switch over to young Vince, it was 82. But the father didn't pass away until 84, so the father was really still a major part of it until May of 84.
You fans out there who were readers who read the Gorilla Monsoon book, again by Brian R. Solomon, you know that Vince Sr. was assisted by the diminutive and hilarious Phil Zacco and the not hilarious and huge Gorilla Monsoon, as well as Arnold Skoll. And they were kind of like his brain trust back in the earlier days.
Right.
And Vince Sr. was such a grizzled old promoter. He'd been working New York, what they called the New York area for decades. I'm talking about those All-Star Wrestling Championship Wrestling years, Gary Capetta, Joe McHugh,
Sure.
those years. And I think one of the most brilliant things about Vince McMahon Sr., he would take somebody from a different organization or a new wrestler and go, that's not quite right. Here's what we're going to do with you.
Right.
Vince McMahon Sr., I have a list here. This will knock your socks off. I hope you fans out there enjoy this too. He took a mid-card babyface named Mike Valentino in 1965, discovered he really was from the Isle of Malta, and morphed him into Baron Mikel Cicluna.
Amazing.
And within a year, he was main eventing and fighting Bruno in the Garden.
Amazing.
It is. It is. If you watch the Mike Valentino match, Mike Valentino didn't look anything like Baron Mikel Cicluna. According to Cicluna himself, he loved being a heel. He loved being a villain.
Mm-hmm.
He really relished making them boo, and he never broke character in that regard, ever. And I think, well, here we go. That's just one. He also named and changed Gorilla Monsoon.
Right.
None of this New Jersey Morella stuff. You're going to be this Manchurian drooling, screaming giant with a couple of awful managers, and he became probably the top heel in the territory.
Mm-hmm.
He also named Hulk Hogan.
Amazing.
Terry Bollea, who used to wrestle as Sterling Golden and Terry Boulder, and nothing seemed to fit. Hulk Hogan worked like a charm, right?
Mm-hmm.
Gave Fred Blassie, and I don't know where that mushroom hair on his chest came from. Remember how he used to shave his hair?
I remember that.
Body
Yes,
hair?
that was
It looked like
bizarre.
a big mushroom cloud. I never saw anything like it. He also named Bruiser Brody.
Amazing.
He also took Lonnie Main, who I know was working under his own name, in a 1972 turned him into Moondog Maine.
That was huge.
Had him howl in the ring and eat goldfish and all that other stuff and all that weird stuff. He'd eat a glass light bulb and things like that. And also he kind of repeated it when he turned Randy Colley and Sailor White into Moondog Rex and Moondog Spot. So he kind of repeated himself there. But a decade, maybe 11 years had gone by, so he could get away with it, So that worked well. Took Joe Scarpa, a longtime good guy in the South, and made him Chief Jay Strongbow, and things were never the same.
Right.
Another Vince McMahon senior creation. A big French guy named Jean, I can never pronounce it, Jean Ferry, or John Ferre. I call him Jean Ferre, or Monster Eiffel Tower, and other names. And he comes to New York, and Vince says, "You're Andre the Giant."
No, magnificent.
He just had that feel.
He had the touch.
The Brute became Bugsy McGraw. A name change that, if you remember, IWA owner Eddie Arnhorn complained about on their own TV show.
Really?
Yes, it was a classic moment. It's out there somewhere on YouTube. The moment Eddie Arnhorn got pissed off and did a 4-minute rant against the WWF. It was beautiful. Ernie Roth was the Grand Wizard in the WWF while simultaneously being Abdullah Farouk in Detroit. Longtime AWS tech Doug Gilbert became Gas House Gilbert.
Right.
Over and over and over again, he would see something in somebody and say, "We're going to make it better. We're going to make you memorable." And he had the flair for that, particularly with the heels. I'm not so sure he did that much with the baby faces, because he'd bring in a Tony Parisi or Dominic DeNucci and just let their ethnicity make them popular. He thought Italians drew in New York, and Puerto Ricans, you had Pedro Morales and whatnot. Let's face it, he used that as a leverage to get the fans in, and it worked like gangbusters. And the baby faces were always soft-spoken, and they were always themselves. But Vince Sr. created these amazing monster heels, one by one. And they drew crowds, and they'd sell out Madison Square Garden, thanks to Bruno Sammartino. And it's easy to say, well, Vince Sr. was those squash matches on TV. That's all I went to. I tried watching I'm talking to as Mr. Neckbeard here.
You're right.
I tried watching one of those shows. There's nothing but squash match. It's boring. It's slow. No angles. No storyline. Tell you what, back then they created a storyline with one thing. No long story arc. Somebody would foul someone on TV, and the next month they'd have a match at the Garden. It worked that way for ages. That's all you needed.
Right.
So it was simple. It was gritty. Wasn't as colorful as today's WWE, but I'll tell you what, I will always have a soft spot for Vince McMahon Sr.
And that was a great recap of his accomplishments. That was really well done, Bob. I mean, I'll add to your list. I mean, apparently, and I think I got this from Brian's book, apparently Ed Farhat was wrestling as the Sheik of Arabi. And I think in the late 50s or the early 60s, it was the elder Vince McMahon who said to him, "Hey, you would do better just being the Sheik. You don't have to do the Sheik of Arabi." So he just shortened it to the Sheik and off to the races. He was at gangbusters from that point.
By the way, it's pronounced Arabi. It's pronounced Arabi, and there was a song, "The Sheik of Arabi." Oh,
right.
I'm the Sheik of Arabi. I wish I could sing it because it's hilarious. You know that song, right?
Yeah, is that the Ray Stevens song?
He might have cut it. That sounds like the type of thing he would have covered. Yeah, but no, this one goes back, I think, into the 50s or early 60s. And it was just a silly song. And I think Gene Shepard used to sing it on his radio show, too, back in the 60s and 70s.
Sure. Yeah, for fans of A Christmas Story.
All right. We're old, guys. You want an old reference? We'll give it to you.
But if we're talking about the movers and the shakers, the real heavy hitters, the power shakers of the 70s, Vince Sr. would have to be number 2 on the list. I'm just going to briefly talk about the guy who would probably be number 1 on the list, and then we can talk about some other guys. But Sam Mushnick, king of the NWA in the 70s, ran things right up until the early 80s. I mean, if the NWA was this co-op of promoters working hand in hand and helping each other and trying to, manage this thing called the National Wrestling Alliance, you needed somebody at the helm who could make everybody happy, who could work out differences, who could point people in the right direction, make useful suggestions. And Sam Mushnick could do all those things and more. And he was the glue that held everything together for all those years. And when he retired, I think it was January of 82, it didn't take long. I mean, there was already issues. I mean, Detroit had already folded up. California, Los Angeles, and San Francisco were already on the way out. There were other dead areas, but without his leadership, without him to kind of keep the guys all working toward the same goal, the NWA as we knew it gradually just vanished, and Jim Crockett Promotions soon became the de facto NWA after a while, and that was it.
Mhm. Right. It's a good way to put it, de facto NWA, because there were other territories even when Crockett was up, but
Right.
they handled it differently back then, and, they could refer I think, World Championship Wrestling, that show that Crockett promoted on TBS, they handled it beautifully. They just referred to the NWA, but they didn't say we're the NWA. That didn't happen until they became WCW, I don't think,
No,
in terms of exclusivity.
No, you're absolutely right. But yeah, those two guys, the one you mentioned, Vince Senior and Mr. Mushnick, those two were probably have to be head and heels above everybody else on the list. But there are still some very important people on the list. I would probably put next, just because of his worldwide influence, Jim Barnett, who of course had the big promotion in Australia, and he was running Georgia wrestling for the most part, and he had his hands in every promotion seemingly and had relationships with everybody in the business, so he was extremely influential.
Can I ask you something? A recent episode, I was talking to our co-host, Joe Puccio, who had never seen the Australia tapes,
Right.
and they're all over YouTube, black and white. I found a reel of about 30 matches in a row that didn't have commentary on it.
Really?
Yeah, I wish I had bookmarked it, because then I'm gonna have to go searching for it, but it just went match to match to match to match, and it was all without commentary for some reason, in that same black and white style that they used to do.
Okay.
Here's my question for you. Do you agree with me that despite the passage of time, I consider Australia under Jim Barnett to be the first hardcore federation? Because nobody presented as much blood, gore, people hitting each other over the head with things, and pure, anarchy as that organization. It was still the 70s at that point. What do you think?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, keep this in mind. The Sheik, when he began his promotion, he took over from Barnett and Johnny Doyle. Those were the guys who were running Detroit before he really became the head man there. So it makes sense that he took over this wild promotion with blood and mayhem and craziness, and that they took their promotion down to Australia and did the same thing down there with these huge cast of characters like Big Bad John and Spiros Arion and Mark Lewin and Killer Carl Cox and Mario Milano and many other big names. I mean, it seems like anybody who was anybody eventually got to Australia, even if it was just for a couple of week tour. But yeah, that was a very wild, over the top promotion. And I would even say that some of the stuff you're referring to was not that different than, say, like the NWO thing in the late 90s during the Monday Night Wars. I mean, you had Big Bad John's army
Yeah.
against
Yeah.
another army, and it was just cutting edge material. It was probably more sophisticated and more outrageous and wild than what we were seeing in the stateside wrestling.
I don't think it was sophisticated. It was unsophisticated. It was like, well, Big Bag John would come on and go, "This is war." And the announcer would go, "This is war. This is all out fury." And it would be. They were overhyping. They were explaining what you were seeing. And just the dirtiest tactics, the bloodiest matches, incredible. And again, they had another bunch of good guys there, Mario Milano and Dominic DeNucci. And
Sure.
you said Spears Herring was a face there. And Mark Lewin was a face who was awesome. By the way, most underrated overall talent of all time, Mark Lewin. Of all time. Equally good as a heel and a face, and could carry a territory for a long time.
Well,
He was very underrated.
Thankfully, he's in the Observer Hall of Fame. It took him a while, but he got in there a few years back.
Jim Barnett, how many other things did he do? Who didn't he work for?
He was just all over the wrestling scene. I mean, from the early 1950s until I think he was there at the end of WCW. He was still alive. So, I mean, he really lasted the entire age of the wrestling that we know. He was there up until practically the birth of TNA wrestling. So it's amazing.
I want to say one name to you here. Jerry Jarrett.
Okay.
And I pose this to you, Steve Gennarelli. I pose this to you.
Right?
My fingers in the air. What other promoter could bring 6 to 8,000 people into an arena, I'll say on a bi-weekly basis, because I don't remember if they did weekly or bi-weekly, whatever it was. Even if it's just bi-weekly or even weekly. How many people could put thousands of people into an arena with just local talent?
You're absolutely right, and that's a huge point. I think you were right in the sense that it was weekly. I think
Yeah, I think it was.
I think looking back on those shows, going back, because I recently did a review of 1975 with Tony Richards, and they were just selling out like every week, 6,000 fans every week. And they had other cities too. It wasn't just Memphis, Tennessee. They had other cities. They were doing well. You know, he wasn't the I don't think he was the de facto promoter until like the late 70s, like maybe
Well,
76,
I think it was
77.
77 when he split up with Nick Goulas.
Right, right. So Nick Goulas deserves some of the credit for the 70s
Some
for
of
sure.
it, but I'm talking the part when if Terry Funk couldn't come in or Dutch Mantell wasn't around, or if here comes Eddie Gilbert, or
Right.
I'll create a monster character like the Leatherface,
You're
right? He created Kamala in a moment of need,
Right,
right?
right.
He would cultivate and make his own stars, him and Jerry Lawler would, and it always seemed to work. But then again, I don't want to give short shrift that you would. Here comes the Terry Funk. Here comes the Dutch Mantell. Here's the Rock and Roll Express. Here's this. Here's that.
Mhm.
So it was a beautiful blend of a good local crew of talent. Bill Dundee was already. I call him local because that's where he stayed most of the time,
Sure,
right?
sure.
And his same announce crew, and watching the show felt like family. And the family would show up for Monday night corn dogs at the Mid-South Coliseum. And I'm not even being facetious. No, they used to have, what did they used to call it? Chicken on a stick.
That sounds good.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. It doesn't. It's not good at all.
Yeah.
No, you take it from me. It's not good. But Memphis Wrestling, Jerry Jarrett, and he was good enough as a promoter to try to pick up the reins and take it into Texas. You remember the ass end of things.
Oh,
And
sure.
he kept it going, but even he saw the writing on the wall for that area, which is a shame because that Sportatorium was a huge deal. The Von Erichs were going, but the Von Erichs let everybody down, to be honest with you. And that was the end of that. So, but no, the USWSC did really feel under Jerry Jarrett, nothing else like it.
No. I'm glad you mentioned them. It definitely had to be acknowledged. I mean, the rich history of the Memphis promotion going all the way back. I mean, it just has to be mentioned. I mean, the announcers, the Dave Brown, and of course Lance, second to none, and just a great studio show. And that stuff holds up today. It will hold up 30, 40 years from now. I'm sure it will.
I still, you know how I love the wrestling from the East and everything else, but I still consider the Memphis Channel 5 show to be the best wrestling program of all time, regular
yeah.
weekly program.
Oh, yeah.
You look forward to it. That was appointment TV. At one point, they had 80% of the TVs in the region watching that show.
Yeah.
80%. That's impossible.
Yeah. Yeah, that day will never happen again, but it was a great time. So another major player from the 70s that we have to talk about is the great combo that ran the AWA, Vern Gagne and Wally Carbo. They'd be high on my list because the AWA was just a money-making operation of a huge enterprise. Maybe the WWF was the biggest overall promotion. And of course, the NWA was this large map of cooperative promoters, a huge map. But for what it was independent of everybody else. The AWA was a huge money-making success. And you had Vern at the head. You had Wally Carbo doing a lot of the business stuff. And they were hugely successful in the 60s, the 70s, and into the mid 80s, they remained very, very successful. And they were major players in the 70s.
No question about it. And the biggest misnomer amongst younger wrestling fans who only see the ESPN tapes
Right.
was the AWA. The AWA had probably the longest swath of promotional cities of any of these organizations, any of them.
That's right.
I mean, they were in California and stuff like that.
Winnipeg.
They were Winnipeg, into Canada, in the make an upside down triangle of the United States and put it smack in the middle. That's where Vern promoted.
Amazing.
I think that's a good way of looking at it, right?
Yeah.
Just take this big upside and put it over a map of the United States. That's how far his reach was. And he was very popular. It was a good style of wrestling. It had its own flavor. There's another organization that pushed local talent too.
Right.
How many more local talents made an organization other than the AWO? It's incredible. That one high school, what is it, Robbinsdale High School in 1977 or something? It's like 11 guys became pro wrestlers or
That's
something.
right.
That's incredible. It's amazing.
It is amazing.
Yeah, and you know what? I also will defend their promotional style in terms of in-ring product too. I will say it was cookie cutter, but it was fun cookie cutter. And the cards built just like WWF cards did. You'd have an opening match with Buck Zumhofe or something like that. And you continue to go on into main events, and the bad guys were always really evil and stopped their Sheik at NLKC. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed all of it. Dick Bockwinkel, Ray Stevens, please. Pat Patterson, come on.
Yeah, huge
Right?
talent.
How good? How
Very
good?
Very good.
All right. I'm going to do one that you're not a fan of.
Let's hear it.
I don't think you're a fan of these guys. But I have to be a fan of these guys, Steve. They brought me to the dance. I'm going to talk about Pedro Martinez, aided and abetted by his son Ron.
And I'm going to fight you on that. Actually, my father knew of Pedro Martinez because Binghamton was one of their cities.
That's right.
When I was just becoming a fan, I would tell my dad, "Hey, I saw wrestling last night." He would just, off the top of his head, he would just say Pedro Martinez. He knew exactly what I was talking about.
He was one of the few promoters who his name would be mentioned on the shows.
Yeah.
Most people didn't, and most people just called their shows wrestling. They didn't really bother in the 60s to say this is blah 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 wrestling. This is championship wrestling.
Right.
Which was a smart promotional tool in that era, and I insist. It was smart because if you're watching wrestling, it's the only wrestling you could get because that's where you lived. Don't even refer to the company name.
Right.
It didn't make any difference. We're going to go see big time wrestling or championship wrestling or all-star wrestling right up the road here, and we could see the world champion because you didn't hear about any other world champion.
Right.
So you didn't have to brand sell back then because it was the only wrestling that different territories could see.
Right.
It made all the sense in the world. But I'm going to talk about them because of the promotional style. Sort of a mix. You know what I thought it was? Just like a mix of Detroit big time wrestling show, which was also in a studio.
Sure.
Because his original, the NWF was in a studio, and the WWF. In fact, they had a lot of the same talent going back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
Crusher Verdue, he was in both of those places. But in this case, it was a little broader. You could tell the good guys from the villains instantly. The bad guys were really, really monsters and ruffians, and you could spot them from a mile away. They had the tone of the wrestling magazine. These villains must be stopped immediately. That was the Einhorn Promotions. And the good guys, I just want to name them. Johnny Powers, who was also helped out with promoting Wink Wink Smile Smile, right?
Right.
Canadian star. Louis Martinez, Tex McKenzie, who was clumsy as I am, but he was big. Then they had a smallish hillbilly, they called him Little Abner, who later became a referee. Chief White Owl, who was a blubbery Chief J. Strongbow. I don't know how else to put it. Like the character was the same,
Mm-hmm.
Tony Marino, who, got around. Dominic Danucci. Tony Parisi, right? Mighty Igor, who was mute. And, he was mute for years. He never said a word. He would just smile and wave.
Mm-hmm.
And then one day I'm watching some promo they were doing, and he was talking fluently. Like, where did this come from? That was a big time. Well, how is he talking so fluently all of a sudden? But the bad guys were really bad. Hans Schmidt, Walter von Erich, Ernie Ladd would come in with his crown, right? Any one of the two stompers would walk in, right? The Love Brothers, Peace and Love Brothers and Sisters. Kurt Von Hess, the first wrestler who ever scared me. Thank you, Paige Sutherland. Eric the Animal, the Mongols, the whiny George Crybaby Cannon, the only 450-pound crybaby in the world. Blackjack Lanza was in. I remember seeing him by himself. And a young svelte Abdullah the Butcher. I remember watching in 72, being scared to death of him. It was the white pants phase.
Right.
You ever see the pictures of him with the white? He was really skinny, or at least in better shape. And he did not use foreign objects in those early years that I recall. Not that he may not have slipped one in but it wasn't the shtick, by that point. But the show was great. Like I said, similar to Memphis and Detroit. A lot of kids in the crowd. Yay, Johnny Powers, yay. The bad guys were real monster heels, more animalistic than in other federations. Although I never saw blood on TV other than one time.
Right.
But either of those groups. He also did, we'll talk about the IWA too. This is all part and parcel. I never saw a lot of blood on their TVs.
Right.
One time I saw blood. Another time I saw hardware blood. That was it. I'm talking about 4 years of watching his organization. So they kept the blood in the arenas and out of the TV. So I don't know. It worked for me. Again, I apologize for those who think it was a minor league or something. All I know is it was regional. They did really well. If you go to some of these wrestling history sites and look
Mhm.
up the attendances, they drew.
Sure.
So they were around for just IWA 2 years, NWA 4 years. I watched them both. That's what I was trained on, right? NWA was my training wheels.
Well, you should be proud of it because look, it was your gateway drug into wrestling. So
It really was.
it got you
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, my training wheels. All right, you got another one, Jackson?
Absolutely. And not just because I'm here in Tampa, but yes, we have to pay homage to Eddie Graham, the
Of
great
course.
promoter in Florida. And, he did a lot to promote wrestling and to put it over as a sport. They definitely tried to push the sporting element here in Florida with great athletes like Jack Briscoe. And of course, we got one of the all-time great entertainers in wrestling in Dusty Rhodes, who became a good guy in 1974. And we had some of the greatest heels of all time, including superstar Billy Graham, who was here. We had King Curtis. We had a whole host of others. But the Florida promotion was thriving throughout the 70s. It started to die out in the early 80s. And then around the time that Eddie passed away in 85, it was almost on its death's door by then. But in the 70s, he was talking to Vince McMahon Sr. on the phone every day. He was NWA president at times. He definitely was a major mover and shaker and one of the people that all the other promoters went to for advice. And he was a great finish guy, too. He knew how to book the finishes of the matches, and they were quite sophisticated from what I heard.
They built long feuds there.
Yeah.
Like, they weren't just a TV thing and a blow up. They would have feuds that lasted for months, if I recall correctly. Am I right?
Yeah, because the promotion was like a weekly promotion. It wasn't like we'll do one show a month. They were doing week to week to week. So much like a soap opera, they had to have twists and turns and changes and things to keep you interested. And it was a very complex way of promoting back then.
TV show was great.
Mm-hmm.
TV show was great, no matter what period it was. Although my favorite episode, I don't know where Soli was at this point, but they had Coach John Heath and Buddy Colt, the two straight-laced guys you'd ever want to see, trying to call a Kevin Sullivan Legion of Darkness. Was that what he called it? Whatever he called his crew of weirdos
Right.
against three jobbers.
Uh-huh.
And they're trying to call it like a sport. And it's like, they were just stabbing the guys and blasting them with chairs and throwing them out of the ring. And Luna Vachon was rolling around on the ground outside the ring and screaming. And, well, Luna seems to be in fine form. It just, it was so inappropriate as commentary. It was classic, It was so imperfect that it was great.
Yeah,
Because these two straight-laced guys are trying to say, well, you may hit him with a beer bottle, coach. I mean, I don't know what to say other than it was absurd and beautiful. It has nothing to do with the promotion. The promotion itself, I hate to say this, but when Dusty left that last time, it really knocked him for a loop.
yeah.
Dusty was transient anyway. He went where the money went or where the booking opportunities were. But when he left in the 80s, wow, did that throw him for a loop, didn't it?
Well, when he left, I mean, he took a whole core of guys with him. I mean, he took J.J. Dillon, he took superstar Billy Graham, I think he took Barry Windham, Ron Bass. I mean, he took this whole crew with him. And that's nothing new. I mean, that had happened back in Buddy Rogers' day. I mean, Buddy Rogers had his own posse of wrestlers. I mean, those types of things happen. But again, talking about the 70s or focusing more on the 70s, Florida was one of the main places to be. I mean, from what I know, he didn't pay well. I mean, he was a cheap payoff guy. I think he felt that, you're living in paradise. You're living in this beautiful place with girls in bikinis, and the weather's always nice, and the road trips are not bad. I can afford to pay you whatever I want to pay you, because you can sleep on the beach if you want. But I don't think he was a fair businessman in that regard. Apparently, his payoffs were very chintzy.
Interesting. Has there a book ever been written about Eddie Graham?
None that I'm aware of, no.
Me either.
That's a great opportunity for somebody.
That would be a fascinating book.
Absolutely.
Very complex person.
Mm-hmm.
And, he had his own wrestling career as well.
Yes.
And that lasted a good long time. Ruggedest looking guy you ever saw, right? Real rugged looking.
Very rugged.
Not so sure the hair was really that color, but he was rugged looking. Well, anyway, there you go. Now, I am going to give a tip of the cap of something I don't talk about a whole lot because I was involved. I was involved with the wrestling promotion once, right? ECW.
Okay.
And my friend Todd Gordon as well as Paul Heyman. And here's why I'm giving them the props. It's just this simple. I don't have to talk for an hour on this one. Everybody knows who wrestled there and whatnot. I was talking with Todd. I really think this conversation with me may have been one of the things that made Todd Gordon start Eastern Championship Wrestling. Because we were in the back. We just met. We were meeting. And we're talking. And I said something like, God, this homogenized stuff now. I'd rather be here watching this tri-state wrestling. We were at Joe Goodhart's thing,
Sure.
right? Because he was one of the money men for that, too. And he said, yeah, me too. I love wrestling. I love Memphis. Oh, I love Memphis, too. We started talking about what we'd seen. The next thing you know, we were like fast friends, just like that.
Right.
Me and Todd. Just really. And that's why he asked me to come on and be the first TV announcer of the Eastern Championship Wrestling local cable access show, which thankfully not many people have seen. But Todd, there's what makes Todd a mover and a shaker. He saw a large fan base in his city of Philadelphia, which always is a wrestling crazy town, were unsatisfied with what they had.
Right.
They didn't like NWA or WWF. They thought they were all too mamby-pamby, wholesome. Papa Shango was around at that point and all that goofy stuff.
Right.
And Todd's idea was to bring Memphis-style wrestling into vogue again in the East. And it worked. And it worked like gangbusters. And, eventually Paul Heyman got involved. And he is another guy who, when you talk to him, you realize he knows everything going back to the 1940s in pro wrestling. He just lives, breathes, sleeps, eats, dies pro wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
That's Paul Heyman. And they also could pick talent out of Atlanta. Look at the people they cultivated. The Sandman, Taz, JT Smith before he got injured, Rob Van Dam, Public Enemy, Tommy Dreamer, Stevie Richards, the Dudleys, Lance Storm, Sabu, who was, not local, the Dudleys. And they finally pushed Shane Douglas, who walked, talked, and acted like a real champion when everybody else was kind of shoving him aside.
Right.
That's what made that promotion great. They could elevate people who had that star power that other people couldn't see.
Mm-hmm.
And it all worked like gangbusters. So you could integrate a Steve Austin at ECW or a Brian Pillman or Kevin Sullivan or Abdullah the Butcher or any of the other guest stars that would kind of show up and lead the way. Got a little gory at the end. There was bad decisions, the New Jack debacle.
Right.
That ridiculous match with the Rotten brothers, Axel and Ian Rotten, just, ripping each other's faces open for 20 minutes. A lot of the stuff was pretty, to be honest with you, it was just so tasteless and dumb that even the hardcore fans were like, eh. And then, of course, became the exodus. When they got popular, all the wrestlers who allegedly weren't paid well enough went on to greener pastures, and you're left with a core of the locals, and they decided, we're not making any money, let's stop this. But I think it was a noble experiment that lasted, what, a decade?
Yeah, at least.
Right?
At least.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
I'd be the first to say it all. It wasn't my cup of tea. I thought a lot of the stuff they did with the women was really tasteless and, just my opinion.
Sure.
But overall, I think it was innovative in a way that they were giving the fans what they were asking for. They wanted the opposite of Matilda the Bulldog and, Dusty Rhodes with polka dots. They wanted action, and they gave it to them.
Well, for the time, it was the Howard Stern of wrestling shows, and that's
perfectly put. Yes.
And that's what those fans wanted. They wanted something edgy and controversial and larger than life, and that's what that was. It wasn't for me, but it was for them. So I never really cared for ECW. I just loved the traditional wrestling. I mean, to me, it was like, it would be like taking a major league game and like giving it all new rules and stuff. It's like, why ruin baseball? I mean, wrestling was perfect the way it was. It didn't need to be changed. But anyhow, I want to take you out of the 90s back to the 70s. One guy that rarely ever gets mentioned on a list like this, so we definitely have to mention him, is Frank Tunney, who passed away in 1983. But he was the uncle of the figurehead president, Jack Tunney. But this is the guy that put on those huge shows in Maple Leaf Gardens, put on these great events like having Bob Backlund and wrestle Nick Bockwinkel in 1979 in Toronto. He was an NWA president back in the early 1960s. So he was a huge mover and shaker in wrestling. And in fact, he was the guy that when Bruno Sammartino got blackballed and was about to give up wrestling for good, he's the guy that gave Bruno a chance to go up to Toronto and wrestle. And that's where Bruno really found his footing as a professional, and then it became the big star he became.
Interesting choice, and one that not many people would bring up. I'm proud of you for this one, because when you said the name, I went, oh yeah.
Why
Right?
not?
because we're not Canadians, we're not up there a lot. And he was probably the Vince McMahon of his area.
Yeah, he really was, and really well respected. And I think what was really cool about him compared to some of the others, he seemed to really work with all the other promoters. So he could get call Vince McMahon, have Backlund come up for a shot, or he did the same with Bruno in the 70s. Around 76, 77, Bruno was coming up there for shots. And then he'd have the NWA champ. I mean, the NWA title changed in Toronto. It had changed up there a few times. But when Race beat Terry Funk in 77, that happened in Toronto. And he's a very important promoter, very influential, and he died sadly in 83. And I'm sure he would have been a major player during the expansion era of wrestling if he had survived to live that long.
Interesting tag. Really was. I appreciated that one because it's off the beaten path.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Well, I just have a couple of final comments. You got to mention Jim Crockett Jr., who was the big promoter in the Carolinas and had so much success in the 80s, but he was running his dad's promotion in the 70s and doing quite well with young talent like young Ric Flair and young Greg Valentine in the late 70s. And we got to mention the Funks on this list, Dory Sr. and his two sons, because they were the guys who were getting everybody over to Japan for these big tours. They were the conduit to go to Japan for Baba. And of course, the Funks were some of the biggest stars of the 70s, most important. And Dory Sr. was a very influential promoter who was very innovative and came up with a lot of the stuff that younger promoters like Eddie Graham and Roy Shire were doing to keep their business going successful.
There you go. I have to agree with Crockett. One of Crockett's most brilliant moves for its time, and people don't even remember this, or a lot of people don't. Remember when McMahon took over the Saturday 6:05 time slot on TBS?
Yeah.
Everybody was up in arms. It was Crockett that bought the slot for McMahon.
That's right.
And that started that great era with, Ric Flair, Dusty Rhodes, Magnum TA, Midnight Express, go down the list, Ricky Steamboat.
The 6:05 era, yeah.
Yeah, the Koloffs, Ron Garbins, Luger and Sting, and everybody else you can name. And it was a really, really good must-see appointment television. It was a really good show. Schiavone and Ross, come on.
Yeah.
It was excellent. And I never got to see that show on a regular basis till right about that point. Yeah, that's right, because I was living in Pelham, New York, and I got a new cable system then. And never missed an episode.
Yeah.
And they built it from there. They, to the Clash of the Champions and other things, the Starcades they did. Jim Crockett Promotions was pretty mint. They really were. I continue to insist to this day, and everybody probably thinks I'm crazy for saying it, if he didn't pay any attention to what McMahon did and stick with his own flavor, I think he would have lasted longer.
No, you're right.
Don't even try to make it childish or create kid-friendly stuff. Just continue on with your hard-hitting action. Wrestling fans always love an alternative, and I think he would have been just fine being Jim Crockett Promotions the old way. But after the sale to Ted Turner, everything went bluey. To be honest with you,
I think they just ran into some major business issues. I mean, they were having huge revenue success, but huge expenses. Like they bought a plane, bought a new offices in Dallas, Texas. And yet they had the same infrastructure. They were running their business out of this, what used to be an old 7-Eleven building, and they had the same accountants, and they didn't have the infrastructure to do all this business that they were doing and merchandising and other things. And Vince had, of course, a huge staff of at least 100 people that could do all those things that they couldn't do. So
that's a good point. Well done. So are we set? Is that our show?
I think we mentioned everybody, honestly, but Bob and I wanted to do on the show was to look back with fondness and respect on the movers and shakers of the 70s, guys that probably don't get mentioned nearly enough because the 70s aren't looked back upon like, say, the 80s or the Monday Night War era was.
I think the wrestling of today is the first era, as going to the mid-2020s, where the 70s influence has faded, pretty much gone.
Right.
It's not there anymore.
Right.
But every other era 80s, 90s into the 2000s, there was still a touch of it.
Yeah, right.
But I think now things have morphed to such an extent that even the mindset of the trainers, promoters, and wrestlers themselves is different than it was in the 70s and 80s. No question about it.
Right.
Everybody looks at it differently. We want to be TV stars. Frankly, I think you should want to be a professional wrestler. I prefer that was first and foremost in their minds when they're training. But, times change, people change, and I got gray hair now. So what are you going to do, right? What can you do? Right, Steve? I can't even eat all the foods I want to eat. That's the age I'm at. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I can't think of a better person to do a show like this with, because you lived through the 70s like I did. I mean, you did the same course that I did. You discovered wrestling on TV. You bought the magazines. You started to go to the matches. And now here we are, two old Fs in our whatever age we're in. And we're looking back on everything. And it's this era, the 70s, that probably gives us our most happiness and our most fond memories.
Absolutely does. Into the early 80s for me. I mean, I was an adult in my mid-20s, and I was still looking forward to the new PWI coming out every month.
Right.
Before I worked there.
Right.
Old habits die hard. I used to love learning about the other organizations through the magazines.
Oh, I did too.
And to me, one of the great moments in my wrestling career, and I had nothing to do with this, or it has something to do with me, was Bruno Sammartino at the WWF Hall of Fame saying, if it wasn't for the magazines, I wouldn't have been known all around the globe and had the opportunities I had to go around the world and wrestle.
Right.
You see, that was the thing. That's how important wrestling magazines were back in those bygone eras, because it was territorial. There wasn't the influence of cable TV or the internet, and you couldn't get all your news instantly. You had to kind of search for it. That's why people read the web now and not printed books anymore. It's another thing. It's like we've all changed so much in all these decades past. But I love those days, and that's all there is to it.
But,
and I'm glad I have the opportunity just to talk about it on this silly podcast of mine, because when I was with PWI, to be honest with you, Steve, I never brought all this stuff up.
right. Well, you didn't have the time to. There was no time to do all this.
Well, not only did I not have time, but it was irrelevant to what I was doing. I was starting in 88, so it was a whole different world then.
Okay.
And once in a while, I would sneak some of my old favorites into an article, or I did an article on Foreign Object once, and who was in that. Found some old photos and went to the races, so. But, yeah, I miss the old days, but I don't have to miss them as long as I got friends like you to bring on the show. We can talk about the stuff that we love to watch in our formative years.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give you one final thought. When I think about those happy times, like the first times I bought, say, the Ring Wrestling, and I was reading those great things in the back of the issue where they
the
would,
agate pages,
those agate pages, and they would tell you, like, okay, and in Scranton, Pennsylvania, this is what happened. These were the matches, and they would give you this detailed review of what happened. It wasn't just like, oh, Danucci beat Lord Zoltan. No, it was a paragraph. It would tell you everything. Again, in the early 80s, I was clamoring for that because ring wrestling had kind of gone away. But then I discovered the Kaiser mags, and they liked to have a very much similar thing where they'd have all these agate pages in the back and all these results from all over the country, and reading them. And it's just like, it's no different than like you and I picking up the sporting news back in the 80s or the 70s, going through box scores and looking at the games and stuff. And you're learning all this stuff. You're seeing all this information about people you know about, players that you follow or wrestlers you follow. And you're just the knowledge you were increasing about wrestling. It wasn't like, a baseball where you could pick up your newspaper and just look at box scores every day. You had to find these monthly magazines to get these recaps. And that was a golden time. And I always will look back on that fondly. And it's great to know you, Bob, because you were a part of putting out those magazines that we all enjoyed so much.
While you're sitting here, I want to send out a thank you to a friend of mine, Terry Sullivan, who was the announcer for Big Time Wrestling and later for Dick the Bruiser Bedlam show.
Sure.
Every week on, you guys, you got to find this on Facebook. It seems like every week he puts out this long list of stuff that happened this week in history. And every organization, the thing goes on and on with clips and match results and people you didn't know were in certain federations working under different names. He lists it all. Thank you, Terry Sullivan. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Steve, you got to check this out, too. If you follow Terry Sullivan on Facebook, you will not regret it. Dave Brzezinski, too. These guys are fountains of historical wrestling information.
Yeah.
And they love every organization, not just their own that they work for. And they're great guys. And oh man, I'm sitting having a coffee in McDonald's, just coffee. Right? I'm sitting there and I've got my phone and I find Terry Sullivan's listing. Hi, everybody. Now we're going to look back at this date in history. And I realized I sat there for 40 minutes reading this thing.
It's amazing.
Between the match results and all the clippings he had on it. It's just
amazing.
wonderful. Terry and Dave, you guys are the best. We got to get you back on the show if you hear my words, because I'm honored just to know these guys, to be honest with you.
Well, thanks for having me on today, Bob. This has exceeded my expectations, going back to the 70s and the 80s and the 90s and talking about these movers and shakers. I feel like a mover and shaker just from discussing it with you.
Well, I was a mover and a shaker when I wrote those. When I wrote those first two PWI 500, you know how I knew I was a mover and a shaker? I'll tell you why. I was getting phone calls from wrestlers. I wasn't. Bill Apter was getting hounded. How did I go down 40 spots? Why am I not in this issue? What happened to my... I never anticipated when we started that thing that people would take it so seriously. And they did from the word one.
Yeah.
So to have my little pinky in, wrestling history like that, because now it's looked forward to every year. It's their swimsuit issue.
Yeah, it is.
Right?
It is.
It's Peter Bright's swimsuit issue.
You immortalize
issue every year.
You immortalize
Yeah.
it because you're going to be in it forever now.
Yeah. Yeah. So the fact I was even a little part of that makes me very proud. I'm proud that it's both the magazine and the Peter Bright 500 are still going on to this day. It makes me very happy to see that. Whereas other stuff has closed up shop and gone away.
Right.
Peter Bright is still around. I give him all the props. Steve Gennarelli, talk about your podcast before I let you go.
Well, I'm on the popular Stick to Wrestling with John McAdam podcast on the Arcadian Vanguard Network. It comes out Friday afternoons every week. I'm on a lot of the episodes, but sometimes I'm not on. But I listen to all the shows. They're all really good. And we're going to have some great episodes coming up soon. So please keep listening. And thanks for listening to Bob's show. And also check out Tony Richards' Pro Wrestling Time Tunnel, which is another great show that I'm on quite frequently. So thank you for listening.
There you go. He's prolific, if nothing else. And I want to say, have a wonderful Sunday afternoon. We're recording this on a Sunday. Have a wonderful Sunday afternoon in sunny, balmy Florida as we freeze our asses off up here on the East Coast. I really appreciate the fact that you're happy when the rest of us are miserable. So thank you.
Well, I'm going to send some heat your way, so don't worry about that. I'm going to send some heat up your way.
In any event, it's Steve Gennarelli, everybody. Come back soon, will you?
Will do, Bob. Thanks for having me back. I really enjoyed it.
That's it for another edition of the Outdated Wrestling Hour podcast. We hope you enjoyed yourselves. Write to us, outdatedwrestling@gmail.com. Our website, outdatedwrestlinghour.buzzsprout.com, where you can find all of our episodes at the press of a button. We will never Patreon you for those. Also on the website, you will find a box that says Outdated Wrestling Hour Fan Club, where for a nominal fee, you can help perpetuate the ongoing adventures of this podcast and our sister show, the Outdated Entertainment Hour, which comes out about once a month. All of it on outdatedwrestlinghour.buzzsprout.com. We're available on every podcast app you can think of. Please join us again. Both the Outdated Wrestling Hour and the Outdated Entertainment Hour are shows provided by Bob Smith's podcasts. The Outdated Wrestling Hour is part of the WrestleCopia podcast network. That's it for now. We hope you had a really good time tonight. And we're out every Friday with new editions of the Outdated Wrestling Hour podcast. So until next time, this is Bob Smith. You might remember me from my days with PWI. Thanks for being loyal fans. Thanks for listening every week. And we always say the same thing at the end of every show. In the words of Ringo Starr, peace and love, brothers and sisters. Peace and love.